unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time.
I've got a question for you. When are accusations of immorality or impure thoughts or wrong thoughts not simply confessionals? Can you think of any time that they're not? Have you ever seen somebody accuse somebody else of wrong thinking when it hasn't been clear that that person is guilty exactly of which they accuse the other person? Think about it. Think of all the people and all the times that you've seen somebody accuse somebody of bad thinking or immoral thinking, wrong think. They're always confessionals. It's always found out later, you know. The guy, the preacher railing against homosexuality, overdoing it. Turns out he's gay, you know. Never is that more true, I don't think, than in this still ongoing. It's been about, almost 4 years now that we've been living in this new age of the accusation of white privilege, you know, or white supremacy, which are the same things. And that seems like it could be a separate topic, but it's not. Anybody who accuses someone else of having white privilege is basically accusing them of being a white supremacist, and therefore is handing out a confessional of their own thoughts of white supremacy, their own feelings of the state of whiteness being better or superior or privileged, or you name the synonym, you know, whatever positive synonym you want to attach to the word white. When somebody accuses somebody else of either having it, speaking from it, promoting it, what they're really doing is confessing their own feelings, you know. And it keeps going on, and you know, when whoever the little genius communist was that thought of this accusation it was pretty good, because it threw everybody for a loop for a second. Maybe still does for most people. They're going, "Oh wait, what? What are you talking about? You're accusing me of a better life, which is affecting somebody else's on this just because of the nature of my skin. Wait, what? What are you talking about?" You know, never get a good explanation of it. You have to get a college professor to twist it all up in a thing to get even some sort of explanation. But the best that you can tell is that it's used as an accusation to throw somebody off their game. And it kind of works because it's so confounding and stupid that you have to go, wait, what are you talking about? But what you ultimately get to is that very basic, Psychology 101 concept of projection. You know, it's a confessional. You know, so, and you'll hear all these people just yelling, "Oh, white supremacy, it's on the rise, Nazis, this and this." And I'm going, well, you know, I didn't think so, but now that I see you saying it, I think it might actually be a problem. And they go, oh, okay, good. At least you agree with me. Yeah, but it's your problem. See, it's not the problem you're accusing. That person's minding their own business. But I can see that when you accuse them of white supremacy and accuse them of having white privilege, I can see that you are feeling some feelings of being supreme, superior, privileged, better than, blessed. You know? And granted, you do see that coming. You see that coming from people that aren't white. You're white privileged, and I know it's fun. It is fun when you've got a bunch of people accusing Candace Owens and other notable black conservatives of being white supremacists. We kind of go, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Because obviously those people are fighting for equal rights and individualism. But when you see it coming from intersectionalists on the left, you really can see that a lot of, and it's unfortunate. Well, it's not even really that unfortunate, honestly. I don't really have a problem with XYZ race supremacy. It's, to me, I look at it the same way as you go. I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers are the greatest football team of all time. Yeah, so what? Who cares? You know, I don't care. I don't care if you believe that Chinese people are supreme. I would kind of hope that a little Chinese boy would feel that way, you know. It's part of self-esteem, you know, to think, you know, I'm a little special. I'm a little better than the rest because of everything about me, and I don't care what attribute they want to name. I'm smarter, I'm funnier, my skin's a better color. I like the way I'm shaped. My culture's better. I don't care if you think your circumstance is supreme. In fact, I just go, okay, well, good for you. Pat on the back. I hope you can keep that good attitude about yourself. That self-esteem doesn't bother me, especially if you're not, you know, attacking other people for not being like you, which is really, let's be honest, if people are talking about hate crimes being on the rise, it's not true. We all know that every hate crime that's been reported has been turned out to be phony. You know, every single time a Juicy Smollett comes around, we just go, oh, another one, huh? There were hundreds after Trump was elected, but I digress. We see it, though. But this white supremacy, I've kind of finally figured out, and since I know most of you that are listening, probably every single one of you listening is a moderate center-right or center-left, you know. I know that you're getting attacked. I'll bet you there's not one person listening to this that has put themselves out there in any way that hasn't been called a Nazi or a white supremacist or a white privileged person of some degree. But the way you deal with that, I'm giving you a hint, is just when somebody accuses you of that, just agree with them. When somebody says white supremacy is on the rise and it's a problem, you say, I agree. And then they go, oh, and you go, but it's your problem. You are the one that has the problem. And the way that I know that is that it's coming out of your face. And when it's coming out of your face, I know that the thoughts originated in your mind. Whatever you are projecting onto others lives in your mind. The only way you can even imagine it, even pretend to be empathetic or to recognize it in somebody else, is that thought needs to exist in your mind first. Somebody who has no sense of ethno-superiority at all is going to be dumbfounded at the concept. They're certainly not going to recognize it in somebody else, you know? It's kind of like a secret code. If you don't know the secret handshake, you don't know that you're receiving the secret handshake. You just think you're receiving a weird handshake. You have no idea what it means. But once you know that secret handshake and you're on the club, that's how you can project it onto others. And you really got to drill down on that. It sounds like just kind of a flip response and like a gotcha response, but it's not. It's got substance to it. And there's lots of, who knows whether it's dubious or not. I kind of the whole field of psychiatry and psychology is a bit dubious to me, to be honest. But regardless, there are reams of information and studies about projection, and denial that fit very nicely into the whole accusation of white privilege. But, okay, now that I've said that, because it can be very maddening, and I'm turning into an impatient, grumpy old man, for sure. There's no doubt that I'm getting more impatient with certain things, more patient with other things, but more impatient with some. And so it's really hard when somebody accuses you of the white privilege thing to try to shut down your conversation or somehow disqualify you from commenting or to insinuate that you're a white supremacist and therefore you're evil somehow. It can be very frustrating. You want to just tell the person to fuck off, shut the fuck up, maybe squirt them in the face with some ketchup, I don't know. It's not fun, but if you can be patient, and I am definitely preaching from a place where I need to hear the sermon just as much as give it. If you can be patient and realize that most of these accusations, most of these confessional accusations, especially of the white supremacy variety, are coming from white liberals. And don't they all? It's come to me from, non-whites, but for the most part, the accusations and the big promotion of the concept is coming from white liberals. You got to slow down and remember that they grew up on the same diet of being told of white guilt that's been pounded into their heads through the public education system, and probably even private education too, to be honest, because a lot of those private educators are the products of public education. So, we've been given a steady diet of white guilt. White people did this, white people did that, it's all terrible, bad, bad, bad. People act like we're taught that white people are great, but it's like, that wasn't my experience, We didn't learn. People are acting like they're trying to educate us about Columbus now, and I'm going, well, I don't remember ever being told that Christopher Columbus was awesome. I always was cognizant of the fact that it was hard times when they first landed on America, and a lot of shit went down, a lot of conflicts between, people who are already here and the newcomers. But so you got to be patient with them, because a lot of it is they're just living in fear of being accused of those same things themselves, so they just project. Before you can accuse them, they accuse somebody else. It's a way of deflecting attention away from themselves. Of course, and within the radical left, there's nobody that fears the radical left like the radical left. They live in fear of each other far more than you live in fear of them. Nobody fears the radical left like they do. We might worry about the radical left, but they actually are in fear of their own kind. It's kind of like that old joke, why do you always take 2 Mormons with you on a fishing trip? Because if you only take one, he'll drink all your beer. You get that joke? I usually have to explain it. It means that they're watching each other. They keep each other in line. And that's what the far left, it's basically what all cult activities are like. Scientology is no different. Pretty much the general thing in cults is you get the members to watch the other members. They self-police. It's kind of like what free speech is happening now, The end of free speech is coming not because of the government, but because of corporations and other citizens, But But that's really a leftist ideology, a hard leftist ideology. They keep each other in line. So it makes perfect sense that they would, out of fear, try to deflect attention away from themselves. And there's another aspect about this too. One of the biggest problems of this is that it's kind of focused only on in one race, white people. Of course, it's like an accusation. You don't hear people going around accusing people of having black privilege, which is a fun thing to do, because I can think of black privilege as a freckled person who gets a sunburn just by watching the Travel Channel or the Weather Channel for 5 minutes. I can definitely tell you that there is brown privilege, or black privilege. They don't get sunburns, not like I do. And I'll tell you, that is a superior way to be. I would, if I could wave a magic wand and have some more melanin in my skin, and get rid of these sunburns, I would do it in a second. I'm not going to go to any cost, but a magic wand I would do. Would I feel like I was betraying my freckled brothers and sisters? A little bit. But I would recommend they do it too. Unless they live in a, cloudy, foggy bog. Then their pale skin is probably beneficial. Works in some way. In fact, it probably is a thing. Maybe we absorb more. Maybe you go pale because you want to absorb more of the sun's rays when it's scarce. Maybe you get more vitamin D faster. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. It's a theory. But yeah, you got to cut them some slack. And because, let me tell you, nobody else gets in trouble for being kind of tribal. And the biggest accusations come from people who haven't yet resolved within themselves and become comfortable with the fact that human beings, for the most part, are generally tribal. Left to their own devices, human beings, generally speaking, there are weird outliers like myself who have a different way of collecting friends, but for the most part, most people just generally are tribal, and they stick to their own kind, which sounds like terrible racist speak. But that's true. If you just go take a survey of churches, people are free to choose whatever church they want. Nobody's forcing anybody to go to church. We have freedom of religion. But if you poke your head in any church on any given Sunday, for the most part, you'll see people separated by tribes. The black people have black church, Asian people have Asian church, white people have white church, and then you'll have these odd ball churches that have everybody in them. But for the most part, people self-organize. And nobody has a problem with, East Indians having an East Indian church. Nobody has a problem with Asians having an Asian church or Japanese things. Nobody has a problem with that. The only problem is when it's a white thing, And we all know that. I don't need to beat that down. But that's why you so often, or more often, get those crazy accusations from white supremacists that are, basically white liberals. And it's because they haven't yet resolved. They haven't figured out that it's okay. They're still going under this idea. They've been tricked into believing that anything tribal that is white tribal is terrible, So they're afraid. They're afraid of being guilty of something bad. They've been told it's bad. They're afraid of being guilty that it's bad. That creates anxiety within them, and it all comes out in these bursts of confessional accusations, fits. And it makes sense. You just but it's hard to be patient with their mental disorder, It's a completely easy to figure out why they have the mental disorder. It's not born into their genetics. It's a socially constructed disorder. It's a reaction against depression. It's a reaction against being treated poorly, It's an act of social engineering. Whoever it was that put those thoughts into the curriculum of public schools ought to be ashamed of themselves for making all these people feel so anxious about basic tribal impulses, you know? No other people have to feel really bad about that. Who else feels anxious about that? Have you ever heard of, I guess there probably are a number of black people that feel terribly guilty about hanging out with other black people. We all know that one black guy that doesn't hang out with any black people at all, even though he was raised with black people, somehow turned his back on them. There are weird cases like that, you know. There are anomalies, but we don't need to count the outliers here. Outliers are outliers, and they're fun to talk about specifically. But in generally speaking, when we're talking about this, the problem of white supremacy, or the accusations and confessionals of white supremacy and white privilege, are mostly coming from rich white liberals. And so you can agree with them when they say it's on the rise. You've just got to somehow finesse them into realizing that if you want to find the real white supremacists, all you got to do is open your ears and listen for those accusing others of having white privilege, because that's a dead giveaway. Because it's certainly a privilege is not being inferior. Nobody says, oh, you're privileged because you're retarded. Oh, you're privileged because you're, dumb or ugly. You don't hear people saying you have disfigurement privilege. You have bad skin privilege. Privilege usually comes with something that's preferred, like, oh, we like that. I wish I had that privilege. So when people are associating those things together, you know that they're probably a white supremacist. In other words, they believe that it is superior to be white. And it's usually either people who aren't white that secretly wish they were white, and that's a sad thing that they have to wish that. And there's a lot of things we can discuss why somebody would feel so badly about themselves. And that's probably a local thing too, Good discussions you can have, when people feel bad about the way they are. I know this personally. Like, when you grow up redheaded and freckled, you don't grow up with a lot of self-esteem. You're not going to find a young freckled ginger who has high self-esteem about their own looks. You maybe, outliers you will, but in general, most kids that have freckles and red hair, ginger hair, they're not going to have the confidence and self-esteem as someone who is tall, dark, and handsome, as they say. Literally the opposite of tall, dark, and handsome are what gingers are usually considered to be. So, and we can talk about that. We can talk about that. We can talk about black people who feel bad about being black and have bad self-esteem, and we can talk about all the things in society since slavery that happened, and we can, that's fine. I'm perfectly willing to have those conversations, But right now, the alarm bells are ringing for white supremacists, and the best thing to do is agree with them and say, if you want to find the white supremacists, just drive to Southern California or Northern California and find a gated community filled with rich white liberals who look at the rest of the world, especially brown people, as exotic pets, precious exotic pets that need to be cared for and managed, and certainly not let out of their cages via zoning ordinances, That's where you're going to find the white supremacists. You're going to find a couple of trailer parks with Nazi skinheads too, but they don't have much power. They're not rich. You're not going to find those trailer park skinheads. You're going to find them probably in neighborhoods that are adjacent to, poor neighborhoods that maybe have a lot of minorities. You might find some blonde kids that got their asses kicked by black dudes or Mexicans turning into skinheads. Or you'll find them in the prisons. We know that prisons are very tribal, But the real place you find the white supremacists are in the rich white liberal Democrats whose policies all condescend to anyone who's not white. And that's really what they are. Name a liberal intersectional policy that doesn't completely condescend and sell out another race. They call it the soft bigotry of low expectations. I think that was somebody trying to be nice. I think that is the hardest form of bigotry. I don't think there's anything soft about the bigotry of low expectations, of looking at a group of people and thinking they are not privileged like I am, they are not capable like I am, they need my assistance, they can't work their way out of their situation without my white knighting, which is another popular thing. You're the white knight. You're going to go say you're the king of the black people. We got a lot of those now too. They're basically the same people, The same white liberals that are accusing other whites of having white privilege are usually the same ones that self-anoint themselves of having all the black friends and they're saving all the black people. But yeah, just keep that in mind. When you hear it, try to be patient. Realize that they are suffering from a mental disorder that was kind of socially engineered in a roundabout way, or maybe a very direct way. There's a lot of names like Saul Alinsky that can be employed, where you could say it was directly engineered, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I think a lot of it, I think one of the idioms to employ here is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, And I think, generally speaking, a lot of the white guilt comes from, a real hard time grasping the whole concept of slavery in a local way, the American version of it, isolate the American version of it without looking at the rest of the world and looking at the slavery in the Middle East that is ongoing, and the slavery in Asia that is ongoing, the slavery in Libya that is ongoing, the slavery from the Slavic countries, which means slaves, Slavic, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, built on slavery, But we like to isolate the American version and get really guilty about it. And when people have white guilt and stuff like that, you can kind of, that is a bit of a virtue to feel that way. So you kind of got to give them credit for going, well, at least they're feeling feelings, They're having feelings, It's very easy to make fun of their feelings or get upset because they're directing and they're channeling those feelings in a weird way. But yeah, you got to be patient with them. And that's me preaching to me. And just so you know, most of these things are me preaching to me, telling myself how to try to be a better person. And that's not easy. And it's probably not even always necessary. Sometimes it's probably good to just be a worse person, Sometimes being a better person gets in the way of getting shit done. Right? Anyway, that's all for now. Thanks for listening.